okay, for you, because you are making the claim, you need to swear that this is your land. And what did this person do? He had to do. He had to do the same thing. Both of them had to swear that it was their land. And who did the Prophet ﷺ rule in favor of? Man, just like this mic, dude, it's killing me. Did he rule in favor of the person who had the land or the person who was claiming the land? Who had the land, right? And this is where it becomes a problem. This is where it becomes an issue. It's like it's very difficult, right? When it comes to land disputes and land issues. Why do you think that is? I'm sorry. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Allah Akbar. Even in the religion, right? Well, there are a number of things that are going on here, right? The first problem is that there's no one has any. I can't even move this. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, turn it away. Just take it off, right? That's probably no. The problem is we're recording, so I need the mic to record. But khair. Otherwise, yes, I would have just taken it off. Right. So I think that there are a number of supporting evidences that were definitely there. Sorry, no. Okay. There are a number of supporting evidences that he ﷺ could have looked at, but there was no clear proof on whose land was whose. And the strongest thing that he ﷺ could go off of is exactly what you said, right? So this person, he has the land, he's using the land, he's farming the land, and it's very, if anybody just comes, like, so for example, if I live on a piece of land and somebody just comes and claims, I don't have any proof, I just happen to be living there, and someone just random just comes and be like, oh, this is mine. You see the problem with that? You see the issue with that? That's why it's so difficult. And the counter argument that the claimant came was that this person who took my land is a what? He said if you ask him to swear, what'll he do? Like, he'll swear on anything. Like, it doesn't matter. This person, he's a fajr, he's a sinner. He'll swear on anything. It doesn't make any difference. But his main problem was what? That he came with no proof, right? He didn't have any proof. He was like, man, this is land that I inherited, and I got this from my father. The Prophet ﷺ, he didn't deny any of those things, right? He didn't say that didn't happen. He said, but when it comes to the current situation, this is the most information that I have, and the most you can ask for is this. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, even we have a very clear hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Al-bayyina ala mudda'i wal yamin ala man ankar." So the proof is upon the claimant, which is a prophetic hadith, and the person who is countering that claim, then he has to swear. That's it. And this is a maxim. This is a religious maxim, and something that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said himself. And again, why? Because status quo is the rule. Status quo is the law. An example, if I have cash in my pocket, right? The cash is in my pocket. How do I prove that this cash is mine? Right? Right? I'm sorry. if I put, like, unless I, like, write my name on it, right? But the question, like, and I think that's a much more digestible example. That it's like I have cash in my pocket and someone just comes up and be like, no, that's my money. It's like, okay, well, at that point, can either of us prove that it's ours? No, right? There's no definitive proof at that point that I can prove that this is mine or he can prove it's his. So what is the most that can be done? Both of us can swear. And when the man objected, right, one of his biggest objection was the fact that, oh man, whatever you have him swear on, he's going to make that swear. Because he didn't have any proof, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, no, like, this is how it is, and this is how we're going to continue it, and this is how we're going to Jazakumullah khair. So that was the previous hadith, and that was the previous discussion, and not just that. Put one over there, man. Come on. Stop being stingy. No, he's not trying to sneak a peek. He's just giving pizza, man. He's being good. There's nothing in the pizza box. No, I'm not going to make the joke. So here, when the man complained, so the Prophet ﷺ, he told them, he said, okay, this is what you can do. Both of you can swear. And the one who made the claim, he complained to the Prophet ﷺ. He's like, man, he would have sworn anything. How did the Prophet ﷺ respond to him? Hmm. So that was before that, right? He said that the one who's lying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will prohibit him from entering paradise, etc., to the end of the hadith. But at the end, when the man complained and he said, Ya Rasulullah, like, had you, like, he would have sworn anything. He said something, he responded to him, he's like, listen, this is all you have, right? This is the only recourse that you have. Because what are the other options at that point? What are the other options at that point? Nothing, right? So the only legal recourse left was he said that both of you have to swear, and that's it. There's nothing more that can be done about this. Now, what's interesting is that we got into a discussion last week. A couple of brothers, they were they're upset with the issue of taking somebody else's right. Taking somebody else's right. So I went back and I actually found something very interesting from Qadi Iyad. He says here. Well, actually, there are a few things that are worth discussing, very honestly. So we'd spoken about this before. When the Prophet ﷺ, he says that the hellfire has been obligated for him. We said, what does that mean? Is it necessary that that individual goes to hell? No. So it means that this person is deserving of it or deserving of that punishment. So those are the two meanings for that. Here, he he talks about something that is probably, or the sharih, or the one who explained the hadith, he talks about something a little bit more controversial, and that is the issue of the dhimmi, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he said that whoever takes the right of another Muslim, very specifically. He didn't say whoever takes the right of the non-Muslim. So over here, he's saying, okay, well, is there a difference between taking the rights of the Muslim and taking the rights of the non-Muslim? What do you think the conclusion of the discussion is? There's no difference, right? There's no difference. There's no difference in taking the wealth of the Muslim or taking the wealth of the non-Muslim. Both of these are held accountable because there is that. Saying that, like, what is, we hear this term sometime from Islamophobes. They talk about the dhimmi. They talk about the dhimmi. The dhimmi is the non-Muslim who lives in Muslim lands. And they use this as a counter-argument to the Muslims or toward Muslims. How do we deal with the idea of the dhimmi? And what is a dhimmi? What is your understanding of it? Mm. Okay, that's their understanding. Yeah, they say, oh, just because they're not Muslim, they don't get the same rights, right? They don't get the same services, for example. So what is the reality? What is the reality with the dhimmi? So if you have a Islamic country, Islamic, not Muslim, right? Very different. If you have an Islamic country and you have these non-Muslims, what is their role in society? Hmm? Right? They don't have to serve in the army. Number one, they're excused from the draft. Right? They're excused from the draft. This idea of draft is actually Islamic. They're having Muslims drafted in cases and situations of war. It's something that's completely condoned by Islam, and it is something that is allowed when there is a need to draft young individuals into war. So they're excused from that. Are there any rights that they miss out on? Are they eligible for zakat? No, they're not. Yeah, so the jizya, there's no fixed amount. There's no fixed religious amount. Different madahib, they set it at different amounts, but it's basically a taxation that they have to pay into, right? They pay this tax to the government for being non-Muslims, and some people will call this second-class citizens, right? So they will say that the Muslims are first-class citizens, and the dhimmi, or the non-Muslim, is a second-class citizen. And we had said that there are certain things that excuse them. They're excused from service. They're excused from zakat, but they do have to pay a jizya, right? They have to pay a tax. How much is that tax? There's nothing in the shara. There's nothing in the sharia that dictates they have to pay a specific amount. That is something that is set by the government. What else? What are some other things that happen for them? Right, they can't proselytize. They can't give dawah to their religion. They can't call to their religion. Can they practice? Yes, they can practice their religion. There's nothing wrong with that. That is not something that is prohibited. Are they allowed to take political leadership positions? To a limited extent. To a limited extent, they can't become the head of state, right? That's not something that's possible. They become ineligible for that, but they can take lesser positions. Why? So why this differentiation? Why this bias against, like, why do you guys hate non-Muslims? What's your problem? Okay, this is a very important point. Number one, the idea of a nation state is a relatively new one, right? So our allegiances or our political allegiances is to the state, right? It's to the nation. Back then, how would a individual show allegiance? Well, through religion, right? Most of the states of the past, you had a religious affiliation and you had a political affiliation. Both of these were usually tied together. Both of these were usually tied together, meaning that because of my faith, you wouldn't find Christians, for example, moving en masse to Muslim lands, and you wouldn't find Muslims en masse moving to Christian lands. Usually, the faith is usually the divide that kept them separate, and even many wars were fought on the basis of faith. So that's one line that's important to keep in mind, that you have this differentiation between faiths, and those faiths are the ones that form many of these nation states or form these countries of the past. So how does that tie into into our discussion? Because you're absolutely right. Right, faith was something that was there. If I ascribe to a particular faith, if I was Muslim, I would take bay'ah to the Khalifa. Right, I would make a pledge of allegiance to the Khalifa at the time, and that's how I would describe myself, and that is the nation that I would be a part of. What else? So that's a very important point. The fact that there was no nation state of the past, right? It wasn't an allegiance to a sovereign state. It was an allegiance to a faith and the people who followed that faith and the leader who was a representative of that faith. What else? So how is that important to the dhimmi? No. Ahsant. Perfect. That's exactly what it is, right? So just like a foreigner doesn't have the best interests of America at heart, the non-Muslim will not have the best interests of who at heart? Of the Muslims. It's very simple. It's as simple as that. Everything historically and even today has to do with allegiances. It has to do with allegiances. This is why you have many nation states also that they will not allow more than one, what is it called? Nationality, right? They will not allow more than one nationality. Why is that? Because of allegiances, right? So this idea of loyalty it's not a new idea, right? This idea of loyalty is something that has always been historical. On how that loyalty actually manifested and played out is what is different. So the loyalty of the past was this, there was a religious element to that loyalty. That religious element has kind of been removed today, right? We don't have it to the same extent. We don't have it to the same, and this is why you will have the dhimmi, right? So the second class citizen, okay, well, why isn't he a first class citizen? Because he doesn't have the best interest of the Muslim at heart. A similar example to this, or something that we might be able to relate to, when I go to, if I'm ill and it's Ramadan, the scholars will say, go and talk to a Muslim doctor. Why? Because the non-Muslims are incompetent? Are they all liars? No, that's not the case. Then what? Oh, maybe. Like, it depends on how competent the doctor is, yeah. Yeah, are all Muslim doctors competent? No, unfortunately not. So, why is that? Why should I go see a Muslim doctor when it comes to helping me make a decision on whether I should fast or not? Well, I mean, the doctor won't necessarily know that, right? What else? Okay. Well, at the least, what is the difference that this Muslim doctor and this non-Muslim doctor are going to have? All right. This one gives importance, right? There's a spiritual importance that this doctor has that this one fundamentally doesn't, and because of that importance, they're going to have a vested interest in you fasting. But the non-Muslim, they don't have a vested interest in your fasting. What is their number one priority? Your health, right? That's it. Their number one priority is your health. And I didn't hear, what happened? Insurance? That's the whole, right? And the Muslim, their priority isn't just your physical health, but also your spiritual one, which is why it's important. But again, so when it comes to these issues of trust, it's not because there's this belief of like us against them. That's not what it is. It's about where does this person's loyalties, where does this person's priorities lie, and that's, or those are the things that are important to keep in mind when we have these discussions and we talk about when we talk about like the quote unquote the dhimmi or the quote unquote second class citizen. And not just that, if the dhimmi wanted first class citizenship, what can he or she do? Convert, right? Like you accept Islam. You say, Ashhadu la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and that's it. You are treated as a first class citizen. Will anybody go and investigate if you truly believe or you accept it? No, nobody cares, right? It's not that thing. Islam is not an invasive religion. It's not going to come and knock on your door and be like, hey, are you really praying in there? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not how it works. Everybody has the freedom to practice, and apparently, as long as you show that you are Muslim, you will always be treated as a Muslim. Okay, here. So he mentions, he said, ثم إن هذا العقوبة لمن اقتطع حق المسلم ومات قبل التوبة. So he says that if an individual takes advantage of someone else and he takes his land or he steals from him and he dies before making tawbah, he dies before seeking redemption, he dies before making istighfar, then he's saying that this person, it will be held accountable. This person will be held accountable. Is it necessary, and this is part of the discussion that we had last week, is it possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still forgives this person? Yes, it is, right? It is possible that He forgives him. And when we talk about forgiveness, does forgiveness need to apply to particulars, right? Does it need to apply to particular actions, or does it apply to the person as a whole? Right? It applies to a person as a whole. We have to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't look at us in individual instances. So an example of this is I take $1 from someone, $1, right? And I donate $1 million. Was it right that I took this person's money? No. Is there accountability and is there a sin for taking his money? Will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala judge me on that instance? Right? He's going to judge me as a whole. Is it possible that He holds me accountable for that? Yeah, absolutely, right? There's an entire possibility that He Azza wa Jal decides to hold me accountable for that, and there's also a possibility that He will forgive me. But it is not realistic for me to think or to believe that I can, almost like I'm holding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hostage because somebody took my right. Right? That's not possible. Allah Azza wa Jal, He is the one who decides when to forgive, how to forgive, and who to forgive. Right? This is not something that is in our hands. Does this mean that I wouldn't receive my right if I was being oppressed or if I was oppressed? No, that's not what it means at all. So again, when we talk about forgiveness, sometimes we zoom in too much onto particular actions and particular deeds, and we forget that we are people as a whole, right? There's a lot to me and you. We're not those instances. We are entire beings, and we have entire actions that are associated with that. Tafadhal. Yeah. So seeking a claim is very different, right? And we had said that it is very possible that a person is held accountable for those individual instances, but does that mean that he will be prohibited from forgiveness as a whole? Right? Do you see the difference? Like, is it possible that you have like those 10 people who he took advantage of seek, their due and seek their right from him? Absolutely. And is it possible that they'll receive their right? Yeah, absolutely. But does that mean that he will be prohibited now from paradise? Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Your bad deeds. Yep. Yeah. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would judge them. Absolutely. Because like I said, I or you or another, like we cannot be we cannot be the gate that prevents an individual from entering paradise, right? That is something that is purely at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's discretion. But I am due my right, right? I'm always due my right. But that is something that will always happen between myself and others. It's not going to happen between me and Allah Azza wa Jal. Does it matter if it's a small amount or a big amount? If I take if I take $5 versus if I take like $1 million? No? I'm just curious.
If you want to steal.
And the sin is going to be according to the amount that is taken or the amount that person is actually hurt. Right? I could take a small amount from a person, but it could hurt them. So, for example, if I steal from somebody who is out of state, right? So I take all his cards, I take all his money, but he's a wealthy person. How much did I inconvenience him? Now, I've probably inconvenienced him a lot, right? Because he doesn't have any identification, he doesn't have any way to get back to it, even though he himself functionally might be a very wealthy person, versus taking $5 from someone else, right? Where it'll have little effect. So it's sometimes we look at these instances, and it's difficult to imagine okay, how is this weighed, on the day of judgment? How are these deeds actually dealt with? And it's actually very complex, and it is something that is truly only the divine, truly only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can determine. The next hadith, the Prophet, the Imam Muslim, he says, وقال حدثني أبو كريب محمد بن العلاء قال حدثنا خالد يعني ابن مخلد قال حدثنا محمد بن جعفر عن علاء بن عبد الرحمن عن أبيه عن أبي هريرة قال جاء رجل إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله أرأيت إن جاء رجل يريد أخذ مالي. So a man came to the Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he narrates that a man came to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said to him, he said, Ya Rasulullah, he said, Messenger of Allah, he said, what do you say about someone who tries to come to me and take my wealth, like forcibly steal from me and forcibly take my money? قال فلا تعطيه مالك. He says, don't give him your money. قال أرأيت إن قاتلني. He says, and what if he fights me? قال قاتله. He said, fight him. قال أرأيت إن قتلني. He says, and what if he kills me? قال فأنت شهيد. He said, then you are a shaheed, you are a martyr. قال أرأيت إن قتلته. And he said, what if I kill him? قال هو في النار. He said that he is in the hellfire. قال حدثني حسن بن علي الحلواني وإسحاق بن منصور ومحمد بن رافع وألفاظهم متقاربة. قال إسحاق قال أخبرنا. قال آخران حدثنا عبد الرزاق قال أخبرنا ابن جريج قال أخبرني سليمان الأحول أن ثابت مولى عمر بن عبد الرحمن أخبره أنه لما كان بين عبد الله بن عمر وبين عنبسة بن أبي سفيان ما كان تيسر للقتال، فركب خالد بن العاص إلى عبد الله بن عمر فوعظه خالد فقال عبد الله بن عمر أما علمت أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من قتل دون ماله فهو شهيد. So over here, the next hadith, we have Abdullah ibn Amr and Ambasa ibn Abi Sufyan. They were about to fight against each other, right? So they're getting ready to fight, and Khalid ibn As, he rode to Abdullah ibn Amr and he persuaded him not to do so. He's like, listen, don't fight him. And upon this, Abdullah ibn Amr said, are you not aware that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had said, he who died protecting his property is a martyr. قال وحدثني محمد بن حاتم وحدثنا محمد بن بكر وتحويل الإسناد وحدثناه أحمد بن عثمان النوفلي قال حدثنا أبو عاصم كلاهما عن ابن جريج بهذا الإسناد مثله. So over here is another supporting narration. What do you guys think about these ahadith? Yes. So that's the question. Is the Prophet ﷺ sharing something metaphorically, or is this something that is supposed to be taken literally? And when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, don't give him your wealth, is this a order, right? Is this a religious order? Or is it him sallallahu alaihi wasallam expressing that this is your right, and you have a choice not to give it to him? The second? that's the one you like? Right. So that's a very important point. Number one, because the Prophet ﷺ, he's saying, don't give him your wealth. This is an order, yes? Usually, whenever we have an order from the Prophet ﷺ, we take it as an obligation. But over here, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's basically telling him, it's like, no, you have a choice to not give him your wealth. You have a choice to not give him your wealth. And he's saying, okay, well, what if I take the choice not to give it to him, and I fight, and like he starts fighting me? Do I have a right to fight him? And he says what? He says yeah. And he says, okay, well, what if I kill him? He's like, well, he's in the hellfire. Why? Because, right? He was the oppressor. He was trying to wrongfully take your wealth. So you said here there's what is the metaphorical understanding that we could have taken away from this? Okay. I mean, that'd be literal, right? About the? Oh, going to hell. So, over here, what? Which one? Do you remember? So here, what I meant by that was when the Prophet ﷺ said that he's in the hellfire, it doesn't necessarily mean that he specifically is in the hellfire. It means that he is deserving of it, and he's deserving of that punishment. Does that help? Okay. So he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he's saying he's deserving of the hellfire. Why? Because he tried to take somebody's wealth unjustly. So there are a few issues here. One of them we had mentioned, we had spoken about. But one of the things that I was curious about is why is he called a shaheed, right? Because if you literally translate the word shaheed, it actually means, you guys know, witness, right? So what is it that he witnesses? And he brings a whole bunch of different statements. The first one he says is that he's called a witness because even if he dies, he's still considered living. So he is a witness, and he sees that. And he's saying that because their souls have now seen Dar Salam, right? The souls have now seen paradise. He also says that the Allah Azza wa Jalla and the angels, they bear witness over their entry into paradise. This is another reason that they're called shuhada or shaheeds. And he's saying that it also can possibly mean that he sees his soul leaving him, and when he sees his soul leaving him, he sees it adorned with good deeds. He says also that the angels of mercy, they are a witness over him so he sees the angels of mercy come to take his spirit, knowing at that point that he is going to paradise. He also mentions that he's called a shaheed because now he knows that he's dying in the best possible way there is to die in the best way there is to pass. As he mentions that he's called a shaheed because he's going to be from the people who witness other and other nations on the day of judgment. And he mentions that there are three types of shuhada. So there are three types of shaheeds. The first of them, the ones who actually fight in war. So that individual who is actively fighting in war, if he is killed, he is a shaheed. And what do we do with the body? Do we wash it? We do not wash it. It is buried, and do we pray over it? We pray over the shaheed or no? No. You don't pray over the shaheed. You don't wash over him, and you don't pray over it. So الشهيد في الثواب دون أحكام الدنيا وهو مبطون مطعون صاحب الهدم من قتل دون ماله. Okay, so an individual who either dies from some type of disease, whether that disease be a physical ailment or an internal ailment, or an individual who dies protecting his wealth, he has the hukam of a shaheed, but what is the difference? Yeah, we wash him and we pray over him. والثالث أن غل في الغنيمة وشبه من ورد الآثار ينفي تسمية شهيدا إذا قتل في حرب الكفار وهذا له حكم الشهداء في الدنيا فلا. Okay, so the last one he mentions, he said that the first type of shaheed is the martyr. The second type of shaheed is a martyr, but he's of a lesser level. And he said that the third type is called a shaheed in name only. He's called a shaheed in name only. He's not actually a martyr because he didn't fight for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake, and he didn't fight for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's cause. Yes? Yes, that would be of the second category. If a person who dies in an accident, right? Like somebody who's crushed, right? Like all of those would be considered martyrs. All of those people would be considered shuhada. Yeah, the one who's drowned. So like many accidental deaths, right? So many accidental deaths, they would have that. They would be given that title. They would be given that honorary title for such. Yeah, you would. All of these. The only person you don't pray over is the one who is actively fighting, right, in the battlefield. And even that, someone might ask like, okay, well, why don't you wash and why don't you pray? Different cultures and different societies and different religions, they honor their martyrs in different ways. Like for example, here in the United States, if a soldier dies in battle, what happens? How do they bury him? Right, there's a 21 gun salute. There's a full. They're buried with the flag. Right, they have. I think there's a certain number of people that carry the casket. So it's not a uniquely Islamic concept to honor to honor your soldiers. Right, this is something that is pretty universal. It's something that historically that has always happened. And so, like I said, it's not a uniquely Islamic concept. How it's implemented in Islam is going to be very different than how it's implemented in other cultures and societies and religions, but this is the way that it is done with us. Yes, you have to be a Muslim in order to be a shaheed. Non-Muslims would not be considered shuhada. So the majority of scholars, they say that the majority of scholars say that this hadith applies whether it be to a large or a small amount of wealth. The Malikis, they say no, that this only applies to a large amount of wealth. Meaning what? There's no, I mean, yeah, it's very it's subjective, right? I don't think there's a clear definition. Nisab might be the one that makes sense, like, or the one where the hand is cut. That could be the only other situation, which is like I think it's like a rubu dinar, like a quarter of a golden coin, which isn't that much. I think it's like $40 or something. It's not even that high an amount, but and why is that? Why did the Malikis say that if it's a small amount of money, you shouldn't fight for it? I'm sorry? It's not worth it, right? It's not worth it because what is the what possibilities are there? I'm sorry? You could die, right? And like, is $5 worth dying for? Like this would be the question that they ask. Like, is it worth dying for $5? Other people will respond is like, it's not about the money, it's about the principle, right? It's about the principle that this person is trying to unjustly take advantage of me. To what extent can you fight? The difference of opinion is concerning the one who's running away. So if I'm actively fighting someone and then somebody runs away, do I now pursue? There's khilaf, right? In this issue, there is khilaf on whether you should actively pursue that person and let him go, or you should let him go. And Allah knows best. There's no one who says that you have to, that you're obligated to pursue the one who took advantage of you and one who stole from you. Yes. You're gonna have to raise your voice just a little bit. Yeah. So the thing is, like, do you run after that person? Like, if someone comes and they're trying to take your money, there's like, you're fighting, you're going back and forth, and he gives up and he runs away. Do I go chase him down now? Mm. Yeah. So, and you have situations where like they just let them run away. I don't. I chased after the pickpocket. So like, I remember I got in a bus one time, and as soon as I sat down, like these two guys, they jumped off, and the conductor was coming to get the money like right after that, and like I felt my pocket. I was like, man, it's those two guys. So I made the bus driver stop the bus, and like I ran after them. I got my money back, but yeah, huh? So there was two of them. One of them, I caught the first one, and like I checked his pockets, and he didn't have anything. But I guess he was a pickpocket. Maybe he would have been able to hide it better, right? No, but the second guy. Then I ran after the second guy. I actually caught him, and I found my wallet. on him, and there's another guy who's there. Yeah, I did. I kind of abused him. I actually like regret it a little bit. I'm like, is he deserving of it? I'm sorry. Yeah, no. Well, so the thing is, they thought they got away, right? So I can't imagine them like running, sprinting full speed. Um, Even when I saw them, they didn't really look back, and I could see them slowing down after they had gotten a certain distance. But was it worth it? Yeah, I got my wallet back. Like it was like really. I was more annoyed about my wallet than I was about the money. You know what I mean? Like 'cause you have like your IDs and stuff in there, and that's like it's really inconvenient getting all that stuff back. That's what I told him. I was like, man, had you stole the money from me, like I would have been less upset. But like you took my wallet. That was it really made me upset. Um, طيب the next hadith قال حدثنا شيبان ابن فروخ قال حدثنا أبو الأشهب عن الحسن قال عاد عبيد الله ابن زياد معقل ابن يسار المزني في مرضه الذي مات فيه. So over here you have a hadith Maqil. He's speaking at a place of he is on his deathbed, right? So he's ill, he's on his deathbed, and he's speaking. قال معقل, so Maqil said إني محدثك حديثا سمعته من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said, I'm going to narrate to you a hadith I heard from the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم. لو علمت أن لي حياة ما حدثتك. He said, and had I been given a longer life, I probably wouldn't have shared it to you at this time. إني سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول, I heard the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم say, ما من عبد يسترعيه الله رعية يموت يوم يموت وهو غاش لرعيته إلا حرم الله عليه الجنة. So in this hadith, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said that there's none amongst the bondsmen or none amongst the slaves who has entrusted with the affairs of his subjects, and he died in such a state that he was dishonest in his dealings with those over whom he ruled, except that paradise is forbidden for him. In the next hadith, قال حدثنا يحيى بن يحيى قال أخبرنا يزيد بن زريع عن يونس عن الحسن قال دخل عبيد الله ابن دينار ابن زياد على المعقل ابن يسار وهو وجع. So over here, similar hadith. معقل, he was in pain, فسأله, and he asked him, فقال إني محدثك حديثا لم أكن حدثتك. He said, I'm going to narrate to you a hadith that you have not heard before. إن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال, that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, لا يسترعي الله عبدا رعية, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not appoint someone to lead. يموت حين يموت وهو غاش لها. He says, and that when he dies, he was cheating the people. إلا حرم الله عليه الجنة, except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibits for him paradise. قال ألا كنت حدثتني هذا قبل اليوم. He said, didn't you tell me this hadith before? Like this isn't the first time you're sharing it. قال ما حدثتك أو لم أكن لا أحدثك. He says that I didn't share it. This is the first time I am sharing this hadith with you. Or he says that لم أكن لأحدثك. He says, or I was not in a state where I could have shared it with you. قال وحدثنا قاسم ابن زكريا قال حدثنا حسين يعني الجعفي عن زائدة عن هشام قال الحسن كنا عند معقل ابن يسار نعوده فجاء عبيد الله ibn Ziyad. So he said that there was a group of us, we went to visit Maqal because he was ill, and Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, he came فقال له معقل. So Maqal, he said to him, إني سأحدثك حديثا سمعته من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, that I'm going to narrate to you a hadith I heard from the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم. ثم ذكر بمعنى حديثهما. Then I mentioned he mentioned a hadith with a similar meaning to the previous. قال وحدثنا أبو غسان المسمعي ومحمد بن المثنى وإسحاق بن إبراهيم قال إسحاق قال أخبرنا قال الآخران حدثنا معاذ بن هشام قال حدثني أبي عن قتادة عن أبي مليح عن عبيد الله بن زياد عاد معقل بن يسار في مرضه. So they were visiting Maqil, and when he was ill فقال له معقل. So Maqil said to him, إني محدثك بحديث لولا أني في الموت لم أحدثك به. He said, I'm going to narrate to you a hadith that I would normally not have narrated to you except that I'm on my deathbed. سمعته رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, that I heard from the Messenger of Allah يقول ما من أمير يلي أمر المسلمين ثم لا يجهد لهم وينصح إلا لم يدخل معهم الجنة. He says that there is not a leader from the Muslims لا يجهد لهم وينصح, and that he does not fight for them, nor does he advise them إلا لم يدخل معهم جنة, except that he will not enter paradise with them. So all of these hadith are talking about the responsibilities of the leader. What does this have to do with the hadith of stealing before? Sure. Oh, the translation. Okay, so basically, in summary, what Maqil is saying is that an individual is not appointed to be a leader of the Muslims, and if he is cheating them, or he is not advising them, or he is not fighting with them, then he will not enter paradise. So what is the relationship between this and stealing? Why did Imam Muslim bring these ahadith? طيب. Okay. What else? Okay. It's so much easier for the leaders to take advantage of others, right? Because all of the other hadith, it wasn't specifically about stealing, it was about what? Taking advantage of others. And when you are in a position of leadership, what happens? Not just you can, it's very tempting. It becomes very easy. It becomes very easy to take advantage of others. And wallahu alam, I believe that's why Imam Muslim brought this with that hadith of like, sometimes we don't think of dhulm and we don't think of oppression in this way or in this manner. So connecting all of these hadith together with the same punishment, right? All of these hadith, they talk about the same punishment, that an individual who does this or an individual who falls into this, that he is deserving of the hellfire, right? He's deserving of the hellfire, and that's why Imam Muslim brings this hadith, or brings these hadith, all of them, he brings them together. قال حدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا أبو معاوية ووكيع وتحويل الإسناد وحدثنا أبو كريب قال حدثنا أبو معاوية عن الأعمش عن زيد بن وهب عن هذيفة قال حدثنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثين قد رأيت أحدهما وأنا أنتظر الآخر قال حدثنا أن الأمانة نزلت في جذر القلوب الرجال ثم نزل القرآن فعلموا من القرآن وعلموا من السنة ثم حدثنا عن رفع الأمانة قال ينام الرجل النوم فتقبض الأمانة من قلبه فيظل أثرها مثل الوقت ثم ينام النوم فتقبض الأمانة من قلبه فيظل أثرها مثل المجد كجمر دحرجته على رجلك فنفض فتراه منتبرا وليس فيه شيء ثم أخذ حصى فدحرجه على رجله فيصبح الناس يتبايعون لا يكاد أحد يؤدي الأمانة حتى يقال إن في بني فلان رجلا أمينا حتى يقال للرجل ما أجلده ما أظرفه ما أعقله وما في قلبه مثقال حبة من جردل من إيمان ولقد أتى علي زمان وما أبالي أيكم بايعت لئن كان مسلما ليردنها علي دينه ولئن كان نصرانيا أو يهوديا ليردنه علي سعيه وأما اليوم فما كنت لا بايع منكم إلا فلانا وفلان. So over here, this is a much longer hadith from Hudayfa. So he says that I'm going to narrate to you. The Messenger of Allah narrated to me two hadith about amana, about trust. And this is very much in line with the previous hadith about leadership. And he said, I have seen one come to reality. I have seen one actually happen. And I'm waiting for the other. Meaning that I've seen one sign, I'm just waiting for the second sign. He told us that amana, or trustworthiness, descended in the innermost hearts of the people. So amana came down from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it settled in the hearts of people. Then the Quran was revealed and they learnt from the Quran and they learnt from the Sunnah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this natural idea of trust, right? So when we talk about how we deal with one another, one of the fundamental things that He sallallahu alayhi wasallam did with others was build trust. And one of the easiest, and after that trust was built, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descended the Quran and the Sunnah. Then He sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us about the removal or the uplifting or the removal of trustworthiness. He said, a man would have taken a wink of sleep and the trustworthiness would be taken away from his heart, leaving the impression of a faint mark. So he falls asleep for a little while, he wakes up and a little bit of trustworthiness is taken away. He would again sleep and the trustworthiness would be taken away from his heart, leaving the impression of a blister. So before it was just a mark, and he's saying that the next time he woke up is a blister. It's a little bit bigger. as if you rolled down an ember on your foot and it was vesicled. So like an ember is like a hot piece of coal. Any of you ever got a blister on your finger? That's all he's talking about. He's like, so this is the mark that it would leave. And he would see a swelling and having nothing in it, meaning just like a blister, right? If you ever popped a blister, the liquid that comes out is clear. He ﷺ then took a pebble and rolled it down over his foot, and he said, the people will enter into transactions amongst one another, and hardly an individual would be left who would return the things that are entrusted to him. Meaning that amana, it's taken from the hearts. Is it taken, he ﷺ is saying that it's taken how? Over time. That amana just won't disappear. It's not one day all of a sudden people are not going to be trustworthy. It's going to take time for that trustworthiness to appear. And he said that there will come a time when I entrust something to someone, and it almost for surety, what's going to happen? I'm not going to get it back. Or if I get it back, it'll be worse, right, than when I gave it. And I think maybe some of us might have experienced that. Allah Musta'an. And he said that the honest people would be so few, that it will be said that if you want somebody who's trustworthy, go to that tribe. Okay? Meaning that the trustworthy people had become so few that he ﷺ said that someone will say like, oh, I think that there's a trustworthy person in that tribe and in that place. And they will also say about a person, how prudent he is and how broad-minded he is and how intelligent he is, whereas in his heart there would not be faith even to the weight of a mustard seed. And we find this, unfortunately, right? The person who is maybe the most financially successful or the one who has the most worldly things, that will say, oh man, like look at his vision, look at his broad-mindedness, look how well-versed and intelligent he is in order to get all of what he has. And he said, but in his heart there won't even be the slightest bit of iman. And I have passed through a time in which I did not care with whom amongst you I entered into a transaction. He said that, basically what is he saying? He's saying that I'm now in a situation, it doesn't matter who I'm doing dealings with. Why is he saying that? Because he doesn't... I'm sorry? Right, he doesn't trust anyone. So he's like, I don't care who I'm dealing with now because I don't trust anyone. He said that for if he were Muslim, his faith would compel him to discharge his obligations to me, and if you're a Christian or a Jew, the ruler would compel him to discharge his obligations to me. But today, I would not enter a transaction with you except so and so. That this individual is the only one I would actually deal with and I would get into a transaction with. But bidnillah, we'll spend more time on this hadith next week, inshallah, tabarak wa ta'ala. Allahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin, nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Any questions? No? Khas. I'll see you guys for the Tazkiyah class after Salat al-Isha, inshallah.
أشهد